You're up, Commissioner.
All right, well, we're back in session. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. And
So,
You guys have the handout?
okay. So I'm Maggie Mann with Southeastern Idaho Public Health, and I have with me Tyler Butler, who you've all met. Tyler is our Chief Operating Officer, and Allison Bischoff is our Clinical Services Director. And she came into that position sort of as COVID was starting, so she hasn't had the opportunity to come to a commissioner meeting before, and asked if she could come and learn. So we hope that that's okay that we have.
be careful what you ask
extra
for.
person. And she does a wonderful job in that role.
Whatever, you're like, hey, you're going to come along, you're going to have to deal with these guys.
So I'll just walk through the handout, starting with the front page. Just a reminder that our budget hearing will be part of our next Board of Health meeting, which will be on Thursday, May 26th at 9:30 in the morning. That will be at our Pocatello office, and the budget hearing this year will be hosted by the Franklin County Commissioners. That's something that just rotates around through our 8 counties, and it just goes alphabetically. So they will be the actual hosts of that portion of the meeting. You may attend virtually, and the link is on the handout. And because of change in statute last year, it is a requirement now that the chair of the county commissioners is the one that's representing, although that person may designate a proxy. In your case, you've got it covered because Commissioner Moser, as your chair, is also your representative to our board. So, we'll just start through here. The first page is just cut from the statute from House Bill 316, which was passed last year by the legislature, which, as you may recall, was an attempt to have some contribution from the counties to Medicaid expansion costs. The option was put out there to either take a cut to your revenue sharing or to go this route, which was in theory to eliminate the county indigency program and the state cap fund, and so free up funding for local public health. And as a result, the state has cut all general fund aid to the public health district statewide. So just put that there as a reference. So page 2 is a pie chart that just shows now 3 funding streams for our coming budget year, fiscal year 2023, which will begin on July 1. So as you can see, contracts in the orange are our biggest funding source. They make up 56.4% of our total overall funding. Those are largely subgrants through the Department of Health and Welfare, but also the Department of Environmental Quality and the Office of Drug Policy out of the governor's office. We receive our next largest share of funding from the 8 counties that we serve. That is a total of 26.6% of our overall budget. And we have a breakdown there so that you can see what each county is contributing as a share of our total budget. So Bannock County, of course, is our largest and most populated county, has the biggest contribution to our county share. So what you contribute to us makes up 12.6% of our overall budget. Bingham County is next at 6.5%, Franklin County at 2.2%, and the rest are all under 2%. You can see tiny little Butte County is at 0.4%. They're the smallest contributor to our county contribution.
So on that pie chart, when we talked about this last meeting, is the state used to be about half of what the county is now.
Correct, yeah. So for years, the state contribution and the county contribution was pretty equivalent. Sometimes there would be some variation, but it was pretty much 50-50 share, the state and the counties. And then our fees, which come from our clinical services and our environmental health programs, things like septic permitting, food establishment licensing, that sort of thing, they make up 17% of our total budget. And that has increased somewhat over the last couple of years. For a long time, it was right about 13-14%, but that's making up a larger share of our budget at this point in time. So we'll just walk through some pretty significant changes that are resulting from House Bill 316, and then we'll get into the meat of the budget. So on page 3, This is a detail of state appropriation changes. So in our current fiscal year, our state appropriation was a total of $855,600. And you may remember that funded us through the end of February. So House Bill 316 went into effect on March 1st. And so all state general aid to the public health districts in our state ended on the last day of February. So for the coming proposed budget, we're removing that dollar amount. And so it's a 100% decrease in the state appropriation for our coming fiscal year. The next page is the detail of the impact on the county fiscal year for 2023. So the additional county aid, and so House Bill 316, one of the mandates in that statute was that this additional county aid to the public health districts would never be less than what the state appropriation to the public health districts in fiscal year 21 was. And that dollar amount for us was $1,142,300. So all of that dollar amount is being shifted for your fiscal year 2023. So just over $1.1 million. On page 5, we have a summary of county contribution changes. So we'll just start at the top and work our way down. Fiscal year 2022 county pledge for the current year is $1,227,796. There's no adjustment for the fiscal year timing difference because we're not asking for any increase to the county contribution. Additional county aid that was shifted from the state for the current year, and again, that's that March 1 through June 30 time period, was $273,888. So the total county contribution in our current fiscal year was $1,501,684. So the changes we're proposing, again, we're not asking for an increase to the traditional or original county aid. We're asking for level funding to that because we recognize that this new dollar amount that's being mandated by House Bill 316 is significant, and so we've asked for 0%, and we've been able to balance our budget with that 0%. Because of that 0% increase, there's no adjustment to the original county aid based on our differences in fiscal years. We're adding the remainder of the additional county aid, which is that fiscal year 2021 base of just over $1.1 million, plus the $273,888 that you're paying, the counties are paying this year for that March 1 to June 30 timeframe. So that total county aid piece is $868,413. And then we actually have a slight decrease to adjust for that fiscal year timing difference to additional county aid of $11,688. So the total change is $856,725 when you net all that together. So for the fiscal year 2023, which again begins July 1, the total county requests that we're making of all 8 counties is $2,358,409. That's a 57.1% increase, again, driven by that House Bill 316 additional county aid. Do you have questions about that? Okay, I know. So if we look at page 6, this is detailing the original county aid. So you may remember this aid is distributed based on a formula that's set in Idaho code. It's been in place for 50 years now, and it's based 70% on population, 30% on market value. And so we look at an individual county's population and assess market value as a percentage of our total 8 counties. So when we look at the table at the top, the columns in green are the population numbers, in purple are market value. So we'll start with population. And we get our population numbers from the Census Bureau. So the most recent numbers that we got towards the end of March show Bannock County's population at 88,263. That means that you have 48.9% of our district's total population. So 70% of the county aid is based on population. So in column 3, you can see that $419,858 are being asked from Bannock County based on population. Then columns 4, 5, and 6 look at assessed market value. The assessed market value of Bannock County is a little bit lower than what your population percentage is as a percent of the total. It's at 43.9%. So you can see in column 6, the dollar amount being requested of the county is $161,590 for a total original county aid request of $581,448. That is 47.4% of the total county request, and that is a 1.7% decrease for Bannock County from what you are contributing this year as your original county aid piece. So the reasons that result or cause that change, that 1.7% reduction, are in the table on the bottom half of the page. So we see just over $8,000 in reduced revenue based on population, because and we'll look at the population numbers on the next page, and just over $1,600 in reduced contribution based on assessed market value. Again, we're asking for a 0% increase, so the net changes based on population and market value are in column 5, just under $10,000 for that total contribution of $581,448. So if we look at the next page, that details the changes in population and market value. So the blue is the population, green is market value, and the biggest gains percentage-wise are highlighted in yellow. Bear Lake County had the biggest percentage gains this year in both population and market value. Their population grew by 7.4%, and their assessed market value took a pretty big jump at just over 20%. Our smallest growth, and actually was a reduction in population, occurred in Caribou County. They were the only one that saw a negative number on population this year. Our assessed market value, the smallest growth occurred in Power County at 5.4%. And then just for your information and reference, the table on the bottom half of the page looks at the 7 public health districts statewide. The county or the city in which is sort of the headquarters of each of those districts is listed next to the number. And District 7 actually had the biggest jump in population at 10.4%. They're our neighbors to the north, based out of Idaho Falls. The Lewiston area had the smallest percentage population growth at 1.6%. And over the last 10 to 15 years, we've sort of traded off with them as far as being the bottom of the population growth in the state. Typically, we've seen a lot of growth in regions 3 and 4. So this year, District 7 being the biggest percentage growth in population was interesting. And then assessed market value, the Boise, Nampa, Caldwell area really is, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with that as commissioners, significant jumps in assessed market value in those two regions. The smallest gain was, again, in District 2 based out of Lewiston, and our overall District 8 county area was at 12%. So second from the lowest in gains in assessed market value. Any questions about that?
Oh, we'll get fired up here in a minute.
Okay. So page 8 is detailing the additional county aid. So again, based on that 70-30 split between population and assessed market value. So these are just the same numbers as used on the original county aid, applied to that dollar amount that's mandated in Idaho Code of $1,142,300. So the additional county aid request for Bannock County is in column 7, and it's $540,959. So that's 47.4% of the county request. So the next page is where it all comes together. So in the green, we have the population, the purple, the assessed market value. So there is, the first column is the original county aid dollar amount. The second column is the amount that used to be covered by the state general fund, but due to House Bill 316 is shifting to the counties. And then the third column in green is the total contribution based on population. Same for the purple assessed market values. So the first column is that original county aid. The second column in purple is the prior state aid, and the third column is the total. So then the column in light blue shows the total request of each of the counties, and then the subsequent columns are the percent of the county request, and then the percent of the total budget overall. Then the table on the bottom half of the page, just because we are on different fiscal years, and there are lots of reasons for that. The orange bar shows our fiscal year at the public health district. The blue shows the county fiscal year. And then what would be the payment to the public health district per quarter during those two time frames. So happy to try and answer any questions that you have about that.
What was your $207,000 increase in operating expenses?
So a big piece of that was at the request of our board. This last year, we checked into leasing vehicles instead of purchasing them. And we worked with the same company that I know Bingham County has used, and we got a very good deal. So with the approval of our board, we've shifted from purchasing fleet vehicles to leasing them. So that cost came out of capital outlay and into operating expenses to pay for those leases. So that's the most significant increase. We also did receive a pretty significant dollar amount from the legislature through the Millennium Fund Committee, which is the group that oversees the tobacco settlement dollars that came to the states in 2000. And originally, the governor had recommended zeroing out any Millennium Fund contribution to the public health districts, which historically has paid for tobacco cessation services, so that they may be offered free of charge to Idaho citizens throughout the state. We met with the Millennium Committee, and they actually made a recommendation that was contrary to what the governor's recommendation was. So not only did they restore our cessation funding, but they added additional pots of funding for prevention. And one of those pots is pretty substantial. It's over $70,000, but they designated that needed to be for operating related to prevention services. So that's another reason. We also are taking on facilitation of what's called the Area Health Education Center. That's a program that's been at Idaho State University for the last 5 years, but they have asked us to take it under our umbrella. So with our board's approval, we will be taking that on. It's fully funded through a Department of Health.
Is that a legal requirement for the operating purview of the health district?
Which piece?
Is that a section that is under the direct purview of the health district?
Yes.
So by state law, you are required to do that.
Well, we're not required, but if you look at our statute, that is definitely an area that's specified as under our umbrella. So that program is fully funded by the Department of Health and Human Services, and it has a pretty good operating chunk too. It's a professional medical
So there's no
education.
direct impact then on your budget by increase of moving or personnel? Okay.
No, but we have to account for those costs.
Okay.
So those are the biggest contributors to the increase in operating. Tyler, am I missing any of the big ones?
The one other one is related to COVID outreach subgrant. It's targeted towards outreach, and that is a fully funded subgrant, so
There's no match?
No. Yeah, and with the area health education, there is a match, but ISU is making that match, so we don't have to do that.
So those four areas in total, pretty much the 207,000.
The big one is the vehicle
Right.
movement out of capital outlay into operating.
How much were you typically spending on purchasing vehicles every year?
Well, it depended on the year. Some years we didn't purchase any, but between like 36,000 up to like 75,000, depending on where our vehicles and their mileage were in our existing fleet.
So how many vehicles are you looking at leasing this year?
Do you remember?
6.
Yeah,
Six.
that's what I thought.
And then slowly migrating
All of them.
the fleet as we see. We ran into some issues with getting them licensed in a timely manner, and so we're hoping that when they turn over this next year with the initial 6 that we leased, that we'll be able to just start rolling more of those in.
Okay, so then on the next page is a summary of our budget, and I'll just start at the top and walk our way down. So and I'll explain the columns too. So column 1 is our current adjusted budget. We don't often make or request adjustments to the original budget from our board, but there are situations where maybe we get a new subgrant that has a significant amount of funding that's going to put our budget out of whack. So we will go to our board and request a budget adjustment. They consider that and make a decision on that. So the first column is our adjusted budget. So that's what we are operating under currently. Column 2 is our original budget request. Column 3, highlighted in yellow, is what we are proposing for fiscal year 23. Column 4 shows what we are over or under our current adjusted budget. And then column 5 shows that percentage change. So starting at the top and working our way down, the first row is our full-time equivalents or full-time employees. So in our current budget, we have 92.83 full-time equivalents, and we are requesting a decrease in staffing to 89.08. That's a decrease of 4%. That change is largely due to positions that were COVID related, that were fully funded by subgrants, but that work is tapering off. And so as people leave those positions, we are choosing not to fill them. So we're removing them from our budget.
Real quick, how many open positions do you have right now that you've been unable to fill?
Right now, I think the only one that we're struggling to fill is a registered environmental health specialist position that would cover Caribou and Bear Lake counties. The person that we had in that position moved to Hawaii last June. We did actually fill that position internally, but that person, after being in the position for about 6 months, had some family demands that took precedent over their current position, and so they have left that position, and so now we're working to try and fill that one. It's a challenge sometimes to find someone who meets the minimum qualifications for that type of position in our more rural communities.
Okay.
I will say, as we've had open positions come up, quite a few of them have been filled by the people who were doing COVID-related work, which has been great because we have some wonderful people on that team and we'd like to be able to keep them. And so we've done a lot of internal shifting around as people, as the COVID work tapers off. So that's been great. So the next line shows our expenditures. We have 3 categories: personnel, operating, and capital outlay. Personnel is our largest category. So you can see we're requesting $6,954,193 for personnel. That's an increase of $12,746, or a 0.2% increase. So we have seen a number of things like the cost, our cost for employee health insurance is going up. We have requested from our board a change in employee compensation. It's a merit pool of 3.2%, as well as a pay line move. So we are still, even though the state is not funding us anymore, we are still participating in some state systems, like the state financial systems. And as a result of that, we are still in those pay structures. And the state is moving those pay structures this year, 3%. And so if we don't also do a pay line move with our people, then as we hire new people at the new minimums, they could potentially be making more than our existing people. So we've requested a 2% pay structure move and a 3.2% merit increase, which is based on performance
So
evaluation.
you're doing a 5.2% across the board then?
No, we're not.
Is
So
your pay merit based upon select individuals, or is every person available to receive it?
So everyone who is no longer on probation, so out of their 6-month period, if they have a minimum of an achieves performance standards, or a solid sustained or an exemplary rating, they are eligible for a merit increase. And we chose to do our merit matrix with a dollar amount rather than a percentage, because that has a bigger impact for people in our lower pay grades, and we feel like that's important, especially when right now people can go to, Costco or Hobby Lobby and make significantly more than what our minimum pay is. We really try to focus on those lower pay grades and giving them a solid increase, but the merit pool itself is a total of 3.2%.
That also includes the fringe changes that she was talking about as in the total cost of that 3.2%.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
So our operating costs are increasing 12.1%, and we've talked about some of the big drivers of that already. We're asking for 0 in capital outlay. We currently don't have any projects planned that would take significant dollar amounts. If that were to change, if we would have some kind of situation arise, then we would, of course, go to our board, explain the situation, and seek their approval for making any capital outlay expenditures. So then we look at revenue. Our revenue, we're looking at a 1.9% increase overall. So again, the county increase is significant because of House Bill 316 and that shift of state general dollars to the counties. That's an increase of 57.1%. For Bannock County, that increase is 31.2%. Some of our counties are taking a bigger hit this year. One is Bear Lake County, one is Bingham County, one is Franklin County. Our state appropriation is going away, so that's a 100% reduction in the state general fund. Our contract revenue is, we project to be up about 2.3% or $110,613. And our fees and miscellaneous revenue, we're projecting to go up 3.8% for a total of $54,596. A big driver of that is, I think, a more realistic projection for septic fee revenue. So we continue to see lots of building going on in our communities. Bingham County, particularly around the Shelley area, is just like constant. But also Bear Lake County, Franklin County, Bannock County, we see pretty significant activity in that program. So, and as far as our district funds, we're projecting a decrease of 12,173. Those district funds are, we do have obligated funds and unobligated funds. It's always been our board's position or philosophy to maintain a minimum of 3 months in operating reserve. So if some kind of crisis happens, we have the money to continue operating for that length of time. We also have obligated funds that are line item designations. For example, we have a legal fee fund because we don't have access to state attorney generals, so we have to pay for private legal counsel. We don't have access to the state building fund, so anytime we have a building project, we need to pay for that out of our cash reserves, those kinds of things. So we're projecting that we won't need to dip into that this coming fiscal year, based on this budget and the way it's built. So, happy to try and answer any questions.
So you have a 26% budgetary shortfall from the state or from the current funding mechanism, and that's what you're trying to make up now. Is what I'm gathering, because as I look at this, I see a 26% increase into the county budget contribution request. So with this loss of state funds, we're at 26% is what we have to try and make up.
But you're talking about on the
Yes,
budget
because
composition?
that's where we're seeing the increase. If there's no increase or change in total budgetary dollar amounts, then the county should be nice. So this is the problem that we are running into, and this is what I warned the legislature when they did this, but they don't quite understand. So, and you made a comment that was perfect when you said about pay raises, this is what the state does. Well, unfortunately, you guys are no longer a state agency, so you have to think in a county mentality, unfortunately. We are bound by a 3% budgetary increase for the counties. So this next year, the rough projection of all of the difference of funds from everybody's budgets set from last year to this year is we will have a total of $840,000 that we can actually increase taxes and have available to put towards stuff. So the ask for Bannock County would be an additional $311,928. That's 37.13% of that change. And every single one of these people sitting in the back of the room are all here to ask for the same thing. So the problem that you run into is that you guys can't think like a county. You have a 26% increase of change, and I warned them that we cannot do this. Is the first thing that you guys are going to have to do is you guys are going to have to look at reducing your budget. This is what the county does. We're getting ready. We just lost another levy that they took out from us, and we're going to have to go in and we're going to have to cull the budget, and we're going to have to go in and do that. And I don't know any way. There just isn't the money for Bannock County to do that. I mean, just simply put, $311,000 out of $840,000, and I have other constitutional requirements and things that just by law we have to do. And so your guys' budgetary request this year, you've budgeted as a state agency, and you shouldn't have budgeted as a state agency. You needed to do a zero-based budget as a county in a county operation, because the counties are the ones that are forced to play with these constraints. So you have to play with the constraints now that are placed upon the counties. There's no way any county can do it. I don't see any county being able to do this. I mean, this just is simply, I mean, I would love it to just be like, yes, let's do that. I mean, in the last 6 years, we've had one cost of living adjustment and pay raise change for county employees. And that's just how counties have to operate. We are not state agencies, and the state wants to play, well, you guys should just do this or do that, and we can't because of the restraints that are placed upon us. And I sat here and I tried, okay, how could I make this work and put this into the budget? I can do this, and then no county employee is going to receive any kind of pay raise or cost of living adjustment. And we've suffered a 13.5% inflation.
Well, and the truth of the matter is,
That's it. I mean,
That's a
your budget is unattainable.
that's a third of our increase.
That's a third of our increase
the county
for
will
one
get this
department.
coming
No
year.
road changes, no anything. Cost of inflation going across every other budget. Your budget is not attainable by a county. I don't see how any county can even come close to this unless they have massive reserves somewhere, which we don't, because the state just limited us to 6 months operating expensive reserves, and that's it. I mean, seriously, if a department brought me this budget, we would just say, that's nice, but this is not attainable. You guys are going to have to go back, and you're going to have to you're going to have to get within your 3% increase. And so right now, you're looking that you're going to have to make up. I get what Jeff is alluding to with unfilled positions. If it's not a position that's paid by, and I get like your all the septic guys and all that stuff that are paid by, that's why I was asking departments if it's fully funded. If it's stuff that's that way, then that doesn't change your increase in your request. Those are state funds. Those are, okay, that's how we have to play this game, is anything that is paid for by the state, we change out of that. But then anything that has to be paid for by property taxes, we have to play this very tedious shell game. Last year, we had, I think we had like, what, $31,000 left in the cap that we had left, and we were confident because we finally were able to give some kind of pay raise, and we watched it all get destroyed through inflation. I mean, as a county, I don't even know what to do. I've had this argument with the legislature, and they don't listen. There's no more money left in our budgets.
So indigent
It's gone.
funds was just wiped away.
Right.
And so now to come up with $250,000 is
Well, we're gonna absorb, because as indigent went away completely, medical's gone, indigent for public defense is gone. Just in those two actions, just in the budgetary, we're gonna have to eat about another $150,000 right off the top for the public defense issues that we're changing. We won't receive any kind of savings or thing there. It'll probably take 3 years, 36 months to get fully into where some stuff will then come up. But for right now, we're going to take right off the top that $840,000. We're already down. We're down to probably $700,000 is where we're at sitting right now. That I know that's going to have to go away. Some of these other things that are required, you just missed them. But all the judges are sitting out in the hall, and I know with what's going to happen on some of the judging stuff, that is what a county exists for. We're probably going to have to eat another $200,000 to $250,000 right now just in the justice. We are required under state statute. There is nothing we can do to get out of this. This is how it works. We have some other public defense contract issues that we've been dealing with that we're probably going to eat another $150,000. So right now, as I look and I do the math, I mean, honestly, for me to do this, I'm going to fire people in the county.
I do want to applaud you for trying to keep your budget where it was at.
Oh, yes.
I sat here and I was thinking, this is fantastic, great job, but at the same time, I'm like Commissioner Tubby, I'm adding things up going, this just isn't working.
So, Commissioners, one thing that we did do last year, we had an abnormally, completely outlier surplus at the end of the fiscal year. And so what we proposed to our board and what they voted to approve was to create a new line item obligated fund, which we call our county drawdown. And so last year we put 50% of the surplus into that line item. So the board does have the option of tapping into those funds to help temper the transition to this county aid. Did you happen to bring that with you?
I don't have.
If you have reserves that you can do that in, and the problem is it's the shock to our system, and this is what I warned 316 about, was you're going to take a whole bunch of money. We are only allowed to raise 3%. You're going to shock our system, and you're going to change our budgetary projections, and we simply can't make up that amount. That's the only way it works. So if you guys have reserves that are sitting there, what I would, and like I said, I would go back and I would find anything you can cut, anything you can get rid of this year, one-time expenses specifically, if it's things that, like I saw your capital outlay, you don't have anything in there. I was thinking, when I started looking through your budget, is there some capital outlay? Is there something there that we can get through? Anything you can go through to bring that down as fast as you can bring it down, especially if it's one-times, if there's positions you can hold off on hiring this year, then allocate those funds.
Terrell, excuse me, Commissioner Tubby, do you have a target number that they can shoot for rather than just going?
Well, the problem is you have a large enough deficit that I don't know what you can. You got to get the raise as low as possible, and I know you're probably not going to be even close to be able to making the 3% number.
So, if I may, Tyler did some projections, and he looked at using different dollar amounts from the county drawdown, starting at 0 and all the way up to $405,000. And what that does on the low end, if you were to take $50,000, but what I'm hearing is that won't be sufficient, so we won't even talk about that. But if we went all the way up to the far end and used a total of $405,000, that would drop the adjusted county aid piece, the new piece that's due to House Bill 316, down to, for Bannock County, a total of $930,610.
So you're still 100 and some odd thousand over the top. Okay.
So that dropped a couple $100,000 off of it.
Yep.
The board, when they considered this, didn't vote to
do this.
utilize any of that.
Well, this is, I'm kind of glad the judges stepped out for a minute, because I hate to say this, is we're going to have a budgetary problem where, well, they're back in, sorry. We're talking about you, judges. This is probably, I mean, we're going to be in a budgetary issue now where if we don't fund certain things that we're going to be required to. And so then what we literally will be doing is we will be, anybody who's not performing a constitutional mandated requirement, we will be making changes. And so this is what I'm saying, is in your budget, yes, you have money available in reserves. I wouldn't suggest all the reserves, but whatever you have, if that's just a burned line item that's just sitting there, you guys have got to go back and you guys have got to gut. And this is where it's going to get painful, but this is what county governments deal with every single day. And this is where, when you're transitioning from a state budgeting aspect to a county budgeting aspect,
It's a different game.
it's a totally different game. And this is what they didn't understand when they did this. And we actually asked for them, if you're going to do this, that there needs to be a drawdown in, you know, a gap funding mechanism for that played out over 5 years. I've already sent 3 text messages since I've been sitting here, and I think we could probably make a gap measure up for next year or something like that, but with some of the legislators. But for right now, I don't know how to make up. Like, I've done this long enough to know that
And I'll just say that in our meetings, the board over there talked about all these things. And that's why we didn't really settle on any budget. We settled on, you're gonna have to go to each set of commissioners
yeah.
and have this conversation, because it is drastic.
And everybody's going to say, go use your ARPA funds to do that. And I've got, we've got $17 million worth of ARPA funds, and we've got $50 million worth of requests from every department that's either constitutional or non-constitutional, and all sorts of things going on. And this is one of those things that, I mean, yeah, you can do this, but then what does it do next year? How do you do this? And you guys have got to change it. And this is where you have to take that whole state thing and just throw it in the garbage, and you have to come sit with Christy Glauser and a bunch of the other comptrollers in the counties, and you have to see how we have to do this, because it is a fundamentally different budgeting process. I mean, there's just no way about it. And so, yeah, I don't know what.
And the other part of this, and I mean, it isn't really the budget, but it is kinda, is the members of the board having equal votes, but representing many people and a few people, but have the exact same vote. And to me, that's gawampus.
Well, it's going to cause, what's going to happen is you will cause legislative issues. And this is where I try and always caution everybody, is we want to make sure that you get crazy legislators and crazy things get happening, as you've seen with 316 and all these other things. And this is where I've tried to tell people, I don't know what to do. I mean, honestly, and since Ernie came back, kind of gave a report of, hey, we got budget, there's increase, there's changes. I've been sitting here reading for the last 2 weeks, whatever it was, trying to figure out how to make this work. And I'm serious. I don't know where to do this at. I mean, the only other thing we're talking about doing is we're going to start going through and, okay, we're going to close down the wellness complex, we're going to close down all that, and you want to watch the torches at the house, and yeah, we'll be burnt in effigy. I mean, then that's one of the only shiny things we have left in our county, and this is where we're at. So this is the fun of politics, is deciding who gets what and when. And I don't, yeah, I mean, yeah, we could use some some ARPA funds to help make up, but then what happens when those ARPA funds are gone next year? That's the problem that you run into, is you guys still have a 26% budget. We still don't have the taxing revenue to make up for it. And then we're outside of property tax revenue. Are we using, your PILT funds, which may or may not be here from the federal government, deciding if they really want to give us the money or not? Some of the state alcohol monies and what they give us, they've tapered those off pretty much completely. I mean, that's where I say the only thing that we come back to then is the property tax issue, and we're constrained in that 3% ask. So I always tell everybody, if your budgets are going up by 3% in a department, you're going to have problems. I mean, that's what the state has given us, and that's all we have to work with. And so I would go back to the board. I would try and gut as much as you can, use what you have in your reserves, and then we'll have to try and figure out what we can do with ARPA funds and other things. But that's just a one-time fix. And the cautionary tale, especially in county government, is you never, ever, ever put operational expenses or anything from one-time monies. If it can't fit into a continuous revenue source, property taxes or stuff like that, then you should never do that, because then that's what gets you into a budgetary problem of as soon as those revenues fall away, like ARPA funds. If ARPA funds fall away and you have continuous expense that can't be covered by property tax, then we have budgetary fall off, and then you're just laying people off. And we don't want to get to that point. If there's any way that you guys can cut down budget, we'll try and make up differences in other things, and I don't. That's the only thing I can come up with. But that only fixes it this year. That's not next year, and that's the problem, is we need to be looking, because if we can get you guys back into realignment, then into the budgetary cycle, when you come in and say, hey, we've got a 3% increase into our budget that we know that we're going to have probably from our counties or whatever, that's something that then, or even hey, we've got a 10% increase in our budget, we need to do this. That's a much more manageable thing. But when you're looking at that rate of change, I don't know how we do that.
I'm just wondering if we don't invite Tyler or Maggie to some of our budgeting sessions.
They're going to have to come to budgeting and see.
Sit down and be a part of the process and understand where we're at and where we're going, because I'm with Commissioner Tubby. This
We need to do that.
This hurts.
They're on a different budgeting cycle than we are.
Well, are you guys?
So
You guys need to get off.
to work with that.
You guys need to get off the state cycle then. If your main operational expense is not driven, you need to be at the main operational expense. And I know you have grants and all that other stuff, just like the rest of us, but we operate on a fiscal year for a reason. And you guys need to operate then into the fiscal year, because you're based upon property taxes now. You're not based upon state dollars. And so you should flip that. That would be my first thing, is starting you guys got to get off of the July to July operational cycle.
That's probably just an accounting thing.
It is, but you're going to be, because it's going to get worse.
Yeah, it's problematic because right now we are still participating in the state business enterprise platform. And so that is on a state fiscal year. And, they've been in the process of trying to transition to this new Luma system. I'm sure you've heard about Luma. That's been delayed again, but we feel like we're sort of trapped, because to make a transition to a different platform, we did some exploring this time last year and into the summer at different options, but that transition, building what we would need is a minimum 6 to 9 months process. And so we're feeling a little bit trapped right now by that.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest drivers for continuing with staying on the state fiscal year. Another is our sub-grants. Many of them,
No.
not all, but many are on a state fiscal year as
Idea
well.
for this year, though, you're still operating, though, July to July, right?
Correct.
So your funds run out in July. You're theoretically.
End of June, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
our cycle is the end of the year. So a way to play off your budgetary pressure is if you could actually, if their budget is, if we're on 2 separate cycles and we can pay half of their operating cycle out of one of our fiscal years and out of the other part in another fiscal year over the top of there might be a way to help
That could soften.
to help soften the blow right now. But we still, you guys need to figure out, because that's that becomes very problematic, because then that's,
That was in our paperwork today, as one of the cycles, we just sent a check. I think.
Yeah.
Is what we just did.
and so
But
that's,
honestly, where we're at right now is you come here for us to approve this, you can see that that's not gonna happen. So I'm gonna ask for a motion here, so it is on the records. And then we're gonna have to have continued talks with you, with the other commissioners, and just,
I mean, I just,
game plan has to be developed.
and it can't be, and this is the whole problem, it cannot just be, here, go use ARPA funds. I've had people say, well, just use your ARPA funds and pay for that. ARPA funds are gone next year, and then we're in a problem then next year. There is no money then to do that with. And so that's why I say, is if we can start figuring out how,
Maybe one of the things we can do is call a 5th district meeting. I know we just had one last week, but save you going to 5 or 6 different counties, bring all the elected officials together so we can have this discussion in one room at one time.
we need to get all the county commissioners together, and we need to have a,
And this would include Butte County.
yeah, but
Yeah.
they're not in fifth, but we'll have to add that in.
So, Chrissy, can you reach out and see when we can put
I
something
mean,
like
we
that
gotta
together?
we gotta get you guys, I mean, this is not just a you guys on your shoulders go do this. This is now you're part of, like it or not, you're part of the counties now. You're gonna be lumped in with the evil county governments that hate everybody, and we just want to raise your property taxes and drive Ferraris or whatever, and all of us know that doesn't happen. We've got to get all the commissioners, and everybody has got to get a game plan, because there's no way, we can't just kick it down to where it'll work this year, but we've got to address this to actually fix the problem, to get you guys into the cycle, so in the next 3 to 5 years, you don't have a shortfall.
So, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that this pains me, but I make a motion that we deny the budget request as presented.
Have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
But we will work together.
And if we could do this as fast as possible, we got Board of Equalization that's gonna start coming up, and
We gotta figure out the July.
nothing like having 1,200 hearings that you have to sit through, but we've got to get this done.
And then we'll put together that meeting and let you know.
Okay,
So, again, just try to save you some time and going to 5
Yeah.
or 6 different counties.
yeah, we meet with them all one-on-one anyway, just
Yeah.
because, it's
I'm sure that
important.
they-
But happy to participate in that 5th district meeting
No,
as well.
yes, and the whole thing is if we can get all the commissioners together, I think it might be a good idea to get Seth Grigg down here too,
Yeah.
because he'll help with legislative issues. He's the director of the Idaho Association of
Yeah, I
Counties,
know
Seth. And see if, how are other, and I'll start today, how are other districts
Yeah,
addressing the shortfall?
It-
How's this being done?
it's interesting to me because every other district in the state is asking a minimum of a 3% increase to original county aid, in addition to
Plus the
what's
state.
happening to the state aid. We're the only district in the state that asked for level funding.
See, and I figured you guys, without the state, would be somewhere in the 10 to 15% range. I mean, that's honestly of increase from what we had last year. That's kind of what I was like, okay, where the overall, and I mean, just the shocking of the system, there's just no, so we'll start with homework.
Well, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you for your time.
I don't envy your guys' task,
Welcome to the commissioners meeting.
welcome to what we deal with every single day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a
Matt,
good
I'm gonna
day.
have you come up.
Matt, I hope you're here not asking for money.
Very much so is.
I don't know if this is good timing or bad timing.
Does everybody want to recess for a minute and go get a pop?
Just a pop, or is
No.
there anything else out there? Actually, our situation's not unique to what I'm sure you're dealing with all the time. And my goal today is just to have a discussion. I want to present some ideas of maybe how to solve a problem that we're dealing with. And get input from the commission and other people on whether this is something that's even feasible, trying to get creative. But just to give you a little bit of background, I think it was last year we were asked to do the SWOT analysis and looking at what our biggest threat was that we face. What I listed is losing employees. We have highly trained employees. They do a great job. We focus on outcomes. We want to do a great job for the county, who we feel like we work for, the citizens of this community. We also want to do a good job with the youth and families that we work with. One of the challenges that we faced is we started the crossover youth practice model, which was an initiative that Judge Murray initially implemented. It was a great model to bring us together as stakeholders when we're working with kids that are working within two systems, the child protection and juvenile justice system. And instead of having these families that are already under stress and strain going to all these different stakeholders, and we have competing plans, we have duplication in plans, and sometimes there's just total lack of communication, that crossover youth model brings us all together to work with the family on a unified plan. Part of that means we knew we were going to have more multidisciplinary team meetings. We also have other multidisciplinary team meetings that we have to facilitate that are part of court orders. Those are the Rule 19 screening meetings, which are for kids who are the judge is considering placement to Department of Juvenile Corrections. And then Rule 16 went through an amendment that added Rule 16 screenings, which are very similar, but those are looking at kids that are being at risk of being removed from their home due to safety issues. So we asked the commission if we could reclassify one of our positions to a multidisciplinary team facilitator, which the commission agreed to. The challenge we've had is we have not been able to fill that position. This goes back to before this fiscal year that position's been open. It's a grade 8 position. I think it's 17,000, a little over 17,000 a year. So what we've had to do is we've had to have probation officers facilitate these meetings. These are high-stake meetings. We're talking about whether or not we should send a kid out of this community to the Department of Juvenile Corrections at a cost of $102,000 per year for each kid. We're removing a child from their parents' custody, either for safety issues or for community protection issues. It requires a level of expertise. They're very emotional meetings. There's a lot of planning that goes into those meetings to make sure they're done right, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted that facilitator position that could be dedicated to that. Because we haven't had that position, we're having to go to other probation officers and asking them to facilitate meetings for other probation officers. You should never facilitate your own meeting because at that point there's an ethical issue. It's no longer a fair process when I'm facilitating my own meeting and I have control of the information and how we summarize things. So, and I can tell you it's put an incredible stress and strain on certain probation officers because they're the ones that always say, yeah, I'll do it. Right now we've been covering for other staff that have either been out on maternity leave or will be on maternity leave. We've covered for staff who've left and we're waiting to rehire for. So they're already pretty thin. So what we did was we developed to try to make this more fair, we developed essentially an on-call for facilitating these multidisciplinary team meetings. So there's a on-call schedule we have for after hours. The weeks you're on call are the weeks you would schedule 2 days in the afternoon to be available to facilitate these MDT meetings. That way we can make sure that it's not the same few probation officers that are always doing it, which then makes it difficult for them to get to their other duties that they need to get to that we actually evaluate them on. So one of the things that I'm looking at is, since there's money in that position that's not used, is it possible for probation officers who are facilitating these meetings, which are, they do what we ask them to do, but it does go above and beyond, and it does create a morale issue because of the extra responsibility. Can we use some of that money from that line item to pay a stipend to probation officers when they facilitate these meetings so it provides additional compensation for doing additional duties that we have a position for, but that we can't hire? Now, the good news is we just had an interview last night with somebody that may be a candidate. I mean, we still need to do the background and things like that. So I'd just be asking for this until we're able to get somebody that's hired to do the job. Not asking for any additional funds. I just don't know if we can access funds that's in a current line item that are being unused. And the other thing is, if that's possible, another consideration I'd ask is if it's possible to look at retroactively people who have facilitated those meetings that weren't compensated to see if we can go back and compensate them. Right now, I have a record of at least there's 21 multidisciplinary team meetings that have been facilitated by a probation officer that was outside the, kind of the norm. In other words, it was above and beyond. There's probably a few more than that because when you look at Rule 19s, there's oftentimes a follow-up screening meeting that we need to do. But if we could compensate $150 per meeting, even with the ones we've done so far, we'd be, maybe the $4,000 or $5,000 range. And then going through the rest of this fiscal year, we would certainly not utilize the budget amount that's in the line item for that position. So I'm seeing if that's an option. I'd like to find a way to compensate our staff for this extra responsibility.
So what are we compensating, kind of like at the
That's
jail?
like the jail.
For
The
the,
stipend that we're
The
doing.
stipend.
the training, the
I mean, it is just kind
FTO
of
positions.
in the same.
It's the same thing.
Similar. I don't have the exact dollar amount because right off the top of my
But the
head.
answer is yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're doing out at the jail.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's similar but different situation in my mind in that, and I had a couple of questions if you don't mind if I ask.
No, that's,
Okay. So when they do this, are they getting paid overtime or comp time already?
No, I mean, some will have to work overtime just to get their other duties done, if that makes sense. The challenge with comp time is some of our employees already work 2 jobs, and so for
There's no
them, the comp
incentive.
time isn't.
Yeah.
And then when you do that comp time, and you take that time off, you still get further behind. If
but
that
they're
makes
not
sense.
receiving comp time at the current time for this.
Only if for that week they end up going over in their hours, but it's not a standard
Yeah.
expectation that you're going to get comp
So
time.
we can't double dip.
Right.
We can't give them comp time plus.
That's kind of where I was going.
Yeah.
So we're not doing that.
So what I
Okay,
would,
and-
so I would just say, just like we set up in the jail, where we set up a different pay code, you know, it was set up to be a different hourly rate, correct?
Yeah, and here's the difference in my mind between this and the jail, and I want to support you and I want to come up with some solutions, but just to get the information out there is the deputies at the jail were being paid at a certain grade,
Mm-hmm.
and they were asked to perform duties that were typically performed by an employee at a higher grade, right?
Well, no, in the jail was the
No,
FTO. They were the
for the-
training officers,
for the
where they were
FTO.
asked to do something where they typically don't have to do it.
Right, because typically that would be done by,
Well, no,
No.
they would be the ones that would do it, but in the past, to be an FTO is kind of a pain in the butt, to put it nicely. And
So-
so you kind of have to have guys willing to do it, and if you're not willing to do it, how do you get, yeah.
Let's go this way.
okay.
Let's have you two meet, model it, and come back with the plan with the numbers.
That
So
fits.
that I mean, that's the same thing we did with the jail.
Yep.
Come back with the numbers, come back with the plan, and let's have that conversation so that we match what we are doing in another department,
Yeah,
is what I would like to
yes.
do.
I'm good with doing something. We just need, yeah.
That sounds good. I'd
We
like
agree
something
with
just
that
looking
something
for-
needs to happen, and we've kind of started that, so let's follow in that pattern.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds great.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks, Matt.
thank you. I'll get in touch with you.
Okay, thanks.
Carrie?
I really hope you guys aren't here asking for a $311,000 change of
Commissioner-
budgetary.
We're just looking to spend money, not have you give us money. We know where the money's at, but we want to throw some ideas. And Judge Carnolli just had to step out for a second, but he might join us back here in a minute. Are you ready to proceed?
Yes, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Carrie Hong, Trial Court Administrator for the record.
Ashley Brinkhurst with D6 treatment.
Rob Yass, Administrative District Judge.
Appreciate the opportunity to come and have the next part of our continuing conversation of recruitment and retention of D6 employees. Members of the commission, I try not to be hyperbolic, but this is probably, since we started D6, we're at the most critical stage in our point of operations. And we have some ideas. We always like to bring proposals and focus on solutions to the board. And we have 2 options that we'd like to present and get some guidance from the commission on how to keep valuable counseling staff with D6, and then also hopefully fill some vacancies. We've brought up in previous commission meetings, and Judge Carnaroli has joined us for the record, different ideas of what we can do to keep our employees and help Ashley and help us fill vacancies. Just to for purposes of this conversation and for the members of the public who are here, D6 serves a key function in how we operate our treatment courts throughout the judicial district. Historically, we've had a series of private providers who we believe both lacked the stability of operation and then also kind of consistency and quality of treatment services. And a number of years ago, with partnership with the county, we brought those treatment services in-house as part of the county as a way to address and support the ongoing operations of treatment courts. Treatment courts have been one of the most successful interventions that we've had in terms of addressing substance abuse and mental health in our community, and we're very invested in their ongoing operation. Where we find ourselves today, and this is again a continuation, is Ashley's had 2 vacancies that we've been unable to fill. We also have a current position that's on FLMA, and then on a daily basis, and Ashley updates me, we have recruitment for our existing employees, and we're in very real danger of losing potentially 2 of our remaining 4 positions. We come today to revisit recruitment and retention incentives with some ideas of how potentially we might fund those without asking the county for additional monies. We would like to offer a recruitment incentive for a vacant position to be paid out over time, so it's not a upfront check that the person could collect and then depart. We'd also like to approach during this FY a similar retention incentive for employees to keep them with D6, keep them providing services for our treatment courts until the commission can look at overall compensation plans along with all other county employees in the next budget cycle. 2 ideas, and Commissioner Huff had a chance to kind of hear at the advisory board things that we're kicking around in regards to option A. Option A, working with the Department of Health Trust, they would agree to give us basically a rent vacation for a number of months during this FY, allowing us to potentially amend that contract and have both the spending authority and then the budget dollars that are in this year's budget to look at approximately a $2,500 incentive for retention for existing employees, and then put a similar amount on one of the positions to help us recruit and fill that. That's option A. That we'd have to amend the contract to include language for failure to appropriate, so we would obligate the county in a future scenario past this year, because I know we only like to look at these, not create obligations beyond year to year for the commission. But we think that is a viable alternative. We'd have to budget for and make up the liability in the next county budget cycle, and so there is we would basically have deferred costs to allow us to use budget authority and actual cash on hand to pay that out. We're looking at a projected total cost of about $21,000 to accomplish this. The B option. The B option is that the court was willing to authorize the use of state funds, so Supreme Court dollars that are allocated and passed through and held in Bannock County to approach that same dollar amount. These are the same funds that we used several years ago as startup money for D6, and we would approach the both retention and recruitment dollar amount using kind of those funds that have built up over time, basically their salary savings from vacancies that we've had historically. What we're asking for from guidance from the commission is we have identified funds. We're not asking for additional monies from the county, but we recognize that this is a county operation. These are county employees, but we're also in critical need of keeping counselors to maintain services to offenders in our community and keeping D6 staff at a level where we can basically run our operations. I'll let Ashley speak to this because I tend to take up a lot of air in the room. But when we look at how can we thin further, I mean, we could spin off Teton County, we could spin off domestic violence court, but even losing, taking those 2 pieces off D6's workload, and I'll go back to the same analogy, we're not running enough buses. We would be below the threshold that we're able to provide services for our treatment courts. And going from the total number of positions we're approved to basically staring at 4 available counselors does not give us the capacity to run enough groups, to run enough individuals to meet our both ethical and treatment obligation to our treatment courts. So that's our proposal.
So I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
How long are you wanting to give the bonuses? Is it a one-time deal?
One time this year.
Yearly?
We're looking to do it to get us to the next county budget cycle and work with the county as the county's working with all county employees on what compensation would be. So this is a one-time in this FY.
I was in a city center meeting yesterday, and Sean did offer, he says, before shutting these guys down, that they would give us rent for free or whatever needs to happen. But every organization that is in that building has the exact same problems. Every one of them need counselors. So throwing money after things, is that always the solution? I don't know.
I think in this case it is, because we are significantly below.
You're burning people.
I mean, yeah, when you look at the research I just, in the last 24 hours, because I had two of my current employees that are working for me have come and said, we're being offered a little bit more money with inflation. I have to bring more money home. So I'm looking, I just kind of did some research, like how many counseling positions are open in Pocatello. There are a lot, but we are the lowest. Like, we are so significantly lower. We're $4 to $5 lower than any other agency in the area. So
Okay, you're talking strictly wages. What about benefits?
just wages. What's that?
What about benefits?
Most of them will offer some type of benefit now.
But at the
So-
same, I mean, you gotta look at the whole picture.
Yeah, but we're competing with places like, even if you look at like Health West, who can offer those same types of benefits, the health and welfare, they can offer those types of benefits. Idaho Department of Corrections, that can offer state benefits.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even private sectors. We're not competing with the hospital that are looking for behavioral health counselors. So these are the same entities that are offering also benefits similar to the county.
Percy employers. I mean, because we think that the pension is a big hook, and we love keeping people 5 years so they can invest, but we're up against other Percy employers who have.
Well, I'm talking about their health benefits.
Yeah, I mean, same though. I mean, we're talking, I have one employee right now who is phenomenal, and he wants to stay, but there's a position open at the Idaho Department of Corrections that's a state employee that offers very similar, it's a similar benefit package. So, and we are $5, $4.50, I think, $4.50 lower than what Idaho Department of Corrections can pay on salary, wages, and benefits.
So this would be my, just as I look at this with these two solutions. I believe the rent, because it's a B budget item to A budget, would be an opening of the budget and moving some things around. It takes a bit. If you have funds available in the state to be able to do that, that is the fastest and easiest way to do that, would probably be to go that way. And I'm okay with that. And, you know, after the last time you came and talked, I did the same Google search. I started looking at jobs. I started looking at, and Ernie's right, we have this amazing benefit package that's there. But when you're looking at kids, especially if you're looking at younger people that don't have kids yet, or they're coming right out of college, they, you know, or some of these other people, they're looking for the dollar amount to pay student loans as opposed to some of those other things. Sometimes people, where if you're down in staff, you're burning people, a little bit more money sometimes just makes them embrace the suck and get through it just a little bit, especially if it's about, hey, this is what we do. We're going to have to look at this at budgetary cycle, and we're going to probably have to look at something as a how all this is funded, because as a district court, we need to make sure, how are all these positions in D6 being funded? Is it through, you know, just a taxpayer? Is it just how do we do this? I mean, we might have to get creative in how we start looking at this, because we've got to get somewhere where we can't, you know, if it's going to function this way, then that's what we need to look at.
You know, we've got a number of ideas on the revenue side that we can put into play, but that takes time, and that'll take some conversations in both looking at the state rate matrix under the new managed care contract that's going to kick out next year, monies that the Supreme Court brings in, and then conversation of, you know, we get folks who are under court supervision. They're not Medicaid eligible, they're not under state funding, they have good private insurance, and those, you know, they're within our target population of people who are in treatment courts or under court supervision, and we'd like to use those private insurance before we ask either people, you know, through, you know, public monies to actually cover the cost of those treatments. So there's definitely some
Is that rule change
ways.
or is that law change?
Commissioner Huff?
No, it's just that we'd have to address the insurance
Well,
credentialing.
I think I said it in our meeting, either get busy selling or get busy dying.
Yeah.
And right now, we're dying on the vine because we're not allowed to sell. And we've handcuffed D6 due to some of our accounting procedures and things like that I don't think are necessarily applicable. I think we can make some changes on. So I'm with Commissioner Tubby. If we can use some court funds to get us through give us a few months to try to work on some funding options to help make this a little bit more permanent solution for you.
Budget cycle, we'll have to
That's
address
what I said.
wages.
So I'll tell you the same thing we just told them. You gotta visit with Ryan, you gotta come out with your package. Tell us where the money's coming from, what's going on. It's gotta be 95% baked, to make a decision on.
Will do.
Ryan?
So a month ago, I presented a plan, and B6 was part of it. for
Yep.
What would be effective in October 1, and these conditions they're talking about are consistent with what I found and
Yeah.
presented a month ago. So I agree.
And that's part of the compensation plan that will it bring them into,
But they're not unique,
no,
as you've seen today. I mean, you're the third group that's been in before us today, doing the exact same thing.
I'd say
and,
one unique thing about this group is when I reviewed all the positions in the county, based on how we line up with other comparable employers and based on how hard it is to recruit. I mean, they've had an opening since November with almost no applicants. And so I think that does make them a little different than some of these other departments that, even though it's been like a 2-month delay, they're able to get someone. And they just haven't.
yeah. Like I said with these guys, as fast as you can get us the numbers, the so what we need to get. If you have funds where we don't have to open the budget and roll and move, because that's always a fun and joyful process.
Yeah.
That's just one of those, like, I really, out of all the things that we try and avoid, that's one of the bouncing monies that way between A's and B's, and at least it's in the same funding line, so it really doesn't get sticky. But that's one things that not our outside auditors don't like, is when we take B money and move it to A money. That's where there's some trust of the citizens that we're not going to use operational rents for salaries after we publish the budget. But I'm with you. Let's hurry up and let's push it then and do what we can do. And then, like I said, budget this year is not going to be fun.
Appreciate the support. We'll get
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll get it on the agenda with a finalized where the money's coming from, how we're going to spend it, run it through HR. I mean, for all these, I mean, the county's made up of the people who work for the county, right? And that the ability of the county to serve its constituents is all dependent upon the people in this room. And we appreciate the commission's approach and support to help us keep these people, because they are the county government. And I couldn't be happier with Ashley and her team, but they're ready for that lifeline, and we got to take care of them. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And then are we public defense next?
Yeah, I guess. Where are we at? Are you guys staying for public defense? If they're staying.
All right.
Yeah, let's just
Shanda.
sit back down. If you're staying for public defense, sit back down.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 5 other groups besides that.
Grab some chairs.
We missed one day. One day last week.
Judge, you can sit right there. You can be the comptroller today, Judge. We're going to ask you about budgetary stuff here in a second.
We just did.
Yeah, that's the comptroller's chair.
Commissioners, Shanda Crystal, Purchasing and Economic Analyst. The first item I have before the board today is a discussion of conflict public defense. I did want to start with a discussion about kind of a time frame and a process. You did have an executive session yesterday. You've got another one set for Friday. So I wanted to update the different players of kind of where we are headed and make sure that we are aligning with or getting ready to adjust and switch cases over appropriately and efficiently.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead and go into executive for a minute then.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we enter into executive session under Idaho Code 74-206 1A and or B.
Commissioner Hess?
Yes.